Hi, everyone. I'm Dr. Funke Afolabi Brown. I'm the founder of Restful Sleep MD. And so today I want us to talk about how to sleep train while room sharing. Because I realize as moms who may have your baby in your room and feel just really disempowered, thinking, okay, I guess my child is never going to be able to sleep independently because we're sharing a room. But I'm here to let you know it is possible. Yes, the American Academy of Pediatrics recommends room sharing, emphasis on room sharing, not bed sharing for the first 6 months of life of your child, if it's possible, because that's one way to protect against SIDS. But then I can assure you that it's perfectly safe to have your child in their own room from day one. That is completely okay. You have my approval. But then just make sure either they're sleeping in your room or they're sleeping in their own room, that you follow the ABCDs of safe sleep. So let's review that real quick. The ABCD of safe sleep means that your child should sleep alone, okay, alone in their crib or bassinet, on their backs, and you don't smoke. Okay, so I said that wrong. I said it in the wrong order. A is the child should sleep alone on their backs, in their crib or bassinet, and you don't smoke. D stands for don't smoke, because these have been shown to be risk factors for sudden infant death syndrome. And so sleep training while room sharing essentially could be a little bit more challenging than, if your child is in their own separate room, but it is possible. It can be done. There's some ways that you may need to sort of modify your approach compared to if your child was in their own room, and we'll talk about that in a little bit. So the first is you do want to try to work on bedtime first. I mean, pretty much most times I recommend just working on bedtime, honestly, before we start going into naps and things. I try to say, try to sleep train or teach your child to sleep independently at night, where you get the longest chunk of sleep time. And one thing I have to let you know is you should have clearance from your pediatrician to make sure your child is okay to sleep through the night and to sleep independently. So somewhere around that 4 to 6 months of age is when I would recommend starting that. And so one thing you want to try to do is, if you work on it at, say, bedtime, you're sure that there are less people in the room, there's going to be less disruption. Number two is you want to make sure that the room is as dark as possible, pitch black, right? Use blackout curtains. The goal is you want to block off any kind of light whatsoever, such that your child does not see you. So that's going to be the tricky piece, right? You want the room to be dark as much as possible because you don't want your child to see you. And then number three is you do want to make sure your child's sleep space is as far from your bed as much as possible, right? So that way the noise and all movement and things like that will not wake your child up, and hopefully less likely to wake you up. So move that bed or the crib or the bassinet, a little bit further away, especially since it's not when the baby is still like really young, where you need to wake up frequently to nurse them, right? So that's one thing that would help as well. Number four, you want to invest in a sound machine. Honestly, they're pretty affordable. And what you can do is, what that sound machine will do is, it can muffle out any sounds, any snoring from your partner or from you, or any other adult noises while your child is sleeping. But the strategy with which you want to use this is, you probably want to move the sound machine closer to your bed than to your child's bed, and also just make sure that the volume is not louder than about 50 decibels. That's about the recommended range. So that will muffle out the adult sounds, so the baby does not wake up because of those sounds. And also, babies are noisy. They squirm, they make all kinds of sounds at night. So that would also sort of muffle some of those sounds, but not not muffled enough that you won't hear them cry or anything like that, right? So that's another thing. And then number 6 is you do want to make sure that try earplugs if that's something that would work for you. That can muffle sort of more of the smaller sounds, but it will still help you hear if your baby is crying and things like that. And the best way I recommend going about this is try this out maybe during the day when your baby is napping. Wear those earplugs, try the sound machine and see how much you can hear, right? So you want to be comfortable enough so you can hear your baby crying, but you also want to make sure that you're not hearing every single sound, which is going to disrupt your sleep. Remember, we're working on mom sleep and baby sleep right here, right? If you can do this, this would probably be number 7, if possible. If you have an adult that you can move to the other room or something while the baby is sleep training, do that. I think that would make things a lot smoother so that everybody's not sleep deprived. Or even if only for that week or 10 days or so, that's around how long when I work with clients to get their child to be sleep trained. If you can get that baby back in their own room during the time when they're sleep training, that would be incredible as well. But you don't have to do that. I can assure you, if you sleep train the baby in their own room, you can still bring them back to your room and it will be fine, right? And those skills will stay with them. So those are some tips that I feel will help you to sleep train your child. Now, that's what we're going to do, at least at the beginning of the night, to set ourselves up for sleep training success, right? So now what do we do to handle those night wake-ups when you are room sharing with your baby? Again, not bed sharing, you're room sharing. I think it really depends on what method of sleep training you're using, right? So we have 3 broad groups, I think. Well, that's what I would call it, or 2 broad groups. I would say the graduated extinction and then sort of the full on, extinction method. And when we talk about extinction, it's literally just essentially fading the parental presence from bedtime. So for the graduated, that's a little bit more gradual. It's a little gentler. Parents tend to handle that a little better. The second method, which is the full extension, is the notorious cried out method, which most people are not fans of. So with the graduated extinction, if you decide to use more of the check-in method where you're going in, ideally you would be checking in every few minutes to make sure the baby is okay. That's something that we can sort of work on as well. And so one thing I would say is if you hear your baby crying or fussing, right? They're not crying because they feel abandoned. They're crying because they're protesting. They don't like this. Try to hold perfectly still. Don't move at all. This and just kind of be very still, because if you move, then the babies are where you're there, and then that's it, right? They're going to cry louder, especially if you're using that kind of check-in method. And so what you will do is lay very still, maybe time your first check-in, say, okay, I'm depending on how long you're able to do it for. If you were someone who was going to wait for about 30 seconds or 1 minute, try to count or have a timer or something that will go up after that 1 minute. And then you go to the baby, just checking on them, you're okay, and go back again and be really, really still. I would recommend doing this as best as you possibly can. And also realize that there's sometimes when your baby may be fussing, and they may not necessarily wake up. They may be fussing or they may whimper or cry a little bit and go right back to sleep. So just practicing that pause as you take this in context is something that I recommend doing. And don't start a timer when your baby is grunting. Don't start the timer when your baby just makes a little short noise or a whimper. Start when they're actually crying, right? Because that's when the timer really starts. And then if you're able to wait 1 minute, if that's the amount of time you decided to wait, then you go in and then you go to them, you console them, don't pick them up, reassure them, and go back to your hiding in that sense, and then restart the timer. Okay, if that works, you just did it, and you consistently do this, again, within a few days, we should start to see things improve. But the key is really being consistent, right? Really being consistent. Once you've consoled the baby, just kind of step out, right? Sneak right back in once the baby falls back asleep. and then, go back to bed as well. So this is doable. Takes a little bit more creativity, but I promise you, you can do it. And, womb sharing is a beautiful thing. It's beautiful when it comes to having a small baby who needs frequent feedings initially. It can be challenging, but don't put yourself under pressure. You can have your baby sleep in their own room. If you're someone who, despite all this, you feel like you're just really having a hard time with sleep for yourself, and also, you don't feel like your baby is getting the best of it either, then it might be time for them to stay in their room. You get to make that choice. Okay, the choice is all up to you. As long as you practice safe sleep, that's all that matters. So I hope this has been helpful. I hope this has been helpful. If it has, I would love it if you do me a favor, share this video, subscribe to my channel, like it, comment, let me know how this resonates with you. Share it with other mamas out there, because we all know we could use a little more sleep. And until next time, I hope you rest well.